Hello! Welcome to Squid Essays. Inking your academic pen. My name is Julie and I will be your instructor as we read through HoneyNet. The article source is embedded in the video description below. Feel free to read along. Please note that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay for as little as $10 a page at Squid Essays. The link is in the description. Chapter 1 Introduction. HoneyNet is a kind of a network security tool. Most of the network security tools we have are passive in nature, for example firewalls and ADS. They have the dynamic database of available rules and signatures and they operate on these rules. That is why anomaly detection is limited only to the set of available rules. Any activity that is not in alignment with the given rules and signatures goes under the radar undetected. Honeypots by design allows you to take the initiative and trap those bad guys, hackers. This system has no production value, with no authorized activity. Any interaction with the honeypot is considered malicious in intent. The combination of honeypots is HoneyNet. Basically, honeypots or honeynets do not solve this security problem but provide information and knowledge that help the system administrator to enhance the overall security of his network and systems. This knowledge can act as an intrusion detection system and used as input for any early warning systems. Over the years, researchers have successfully isolated and identified a variety of worms and exploits using honeypots and honeynets. Honeynets extend the concept of a single honeypot to a highly controlled network of honeypots. A honeynet is a specialized network architecture conditioned in a way to achieve data control, data capture and data collection. This architecture builds a controlled network that one can control and monitor all kinds of system and network activity. 1.1 Information Security. Information security is the protection of all sensitive information, electronic or otherwise, which is owned by an individual or an organization. It deals with the preservation of the confidentiality, integrity and availability of information. It protects information of organizations from all kinds of threats to ensure business continuity, minimize business damage and maximize the return on investment and business opportunities. Information stored is highly confidential and not for public viewing. Through information security, we protect its availability, privacy and integrity. Information is one of most important assets of financial institutions. Fortification of information assets is essential to ascertain and maintain trust between the financial institution and its customers, maintain compliance with the law, and protect the reputation of the institution. Timely and reliable information is compulsory to process transactions and support financial institution and customer decisions. A financial institution's earnings and capital can be adversely affected if information becomes known to unauthorized parties, is distorted or is not available when it is needed. 1.2 Network security. It is the protection of networks and its services from any unauthorized access. It includes the confidentiality and integrity of all data passing through the network. It also includes the security of all network devices and all information assets connected to a network, as well as protection against all kinds of known and unknown attacks. The A9AYTZ Security Architecture for Open System Interconnection, OSI, Document X800 and RFC 2828 are the standard documentation defining security services. X800 divides the security services into 5 categories and 14 specific services, which can be summarized as Table 1.10 OSI X800 Summary 8. 1. Authentication. The assurance that the communicating entity is the one that it claims to be. Through entity authentication, used in association with a logical connection to provide confidence in the identity of the entities connected. Data origin authentication. In a connectionless transfer, provides assurance that the source of received data is as claimed. 2. Access control. The prevention of unauthorized use of a resource, that is, this service controls who can have access to a resource, under what conditions access can occur, and what those accessing the resource are allowed to do. 3. Data confidentiality. The protection of data from unauthorized disclosure. Connection confidentiality. The protection of all user data on a connection. Connectionless confidentiality. The protection of all user data in a single data block. Selective field confidentiality. The confidentiality of selected fields within the user data on a connection or in a single data block. Traffic flow confidentiality, the protection of the information that might be derived from observation of traffic flows. 4. Data integrity, the assurance that data received are exactly as sent by an authorized entity, that is, contain no modification, insertion, deletion, or replay. Connection integrity with recovery provides for the integrity of all user data on a connection and detects any modification, insertion, deletion, or replay of any data within an entire data sequence, with recovery attempted. Connection integrity without recovery is above, but provides only detection without recovery. Selective field connection integrity provides for the integrity of selected fields within the user data of a data block transferred over a connection and takes the form of determination of whether the selected fields have been modified, inserted, deleted, or replayed. Connectionless integrity provides for the integrity of a single connectionless data block and may take the form of detection of data modification. Additionally, a limited form of replay detection may be provided. Selective field connectionless integrity provides for the integrity of selected fields within a single connectionless data block. Takes the form of determination of whether the selected fields have been modified. 5. Non-repudiation provides protection against denial by one of the entities involved in a communication of having participated in all or part of the communication. Non-repudiation, origin proof that the message was sent by the specified party. Non-repudiation, destination proof that the message was received by the specified party. 1.8.9.1.3 The security problem system security personnel fighting an unending battle to secure their digital assets against the ever-increasing attacks. The variety of attacks and their intensity is increasing day by day. Most of the attacks are detected after the exploitations, so there should be awareness of the threats and vulnerabilities that exist in the Internet today. First, we have to understand that we cannot say that there exists a perfect secure machine or network because the closest we can get to an absolute secure machine is that we unplug the network cable and power supply and put that machine into a safe. Unfortunately, it is not useful in that state. We cannot achieve perfect security and perfect access at the same time. We can only increase the number of doors, but we cannot put wall instead of doors. In field of security, we need to find the vulnerability and exploits before they affect us. Honeypot and HoneyNet provides a valuable tool to collect information about the behavior of attackers in order to design and implement better defense. In the field of security, it is important to note that we cannot simply state that what is the best type of firewall. Absolute security and absolute access are the two chief points. Absolute security and absolute access are inverse to each other. If we increase the security, access will be decrease. There should be balance between absolute security and absolute defense. Access is given without compromising the security. If we compare it to our daily lives, we observe not much difference. We are continuously making decisions regarding what risks we are ready to take. When we step out of our homes, we are taking a risk. As we get into a car and drive to our workplace, there is a risk associated with it too. There is a possibility that something might happen on the highway which will make us a part of an accident. When we fly and sit on an airplane, we are willing to undergo the level of risk which is at par with the heavy amount we are paying for this convenience. It is observed that many people think differently about what an acceptable risk would be, and in majority cases they do go beyond this thinking. For instance, if I am sitting upstairs in my room and have to go to work, I won't take a jump straight out of the window. It might be a faster way, but the danger of doing so and the injury I would have to face is much greater than the convenience. It is vital for every organization to decide that between the two opposite poles of total security and total access where they need to place themselves. It is necessary for a policy to articulate this system and then further explain the way it will be enforced with which practices and ways. Everything that is done under the name of security must strictly agree to the policy. 1.4 Types of hackers are generally divided into two major categories. 1.4.1 Black hats. Black hat hackers are the biggest threat, both internal and external, to the IT infrastructure of any organization, as they are consistently challenging the security of applications and services. They are also called crackers. These are the persons who specialize in unauthorized infiltration. There could be a variety of reasons for this type of penetration. It could be for profit, for enjoyment, or for political motivations or as a part of a social cause. Such infiltration often involves modification/destruction of data. 1.4.2 White hat hackers are similar to black hat hackers, but there is an important difference, that is, white hat hackers do it without any criminal intention. Different companies all around the world contact these kinds of persons to test their systems and softwares. They check how secure these systems are and point out any fault they found. These hackers, also known as ethical hackers, these are the persons or security experts who are specialized in penetration testing. These types of people are also known as tiger teams. These experts may use different types of methods and techniques to carry out their tests, including social engineering tactics, use of hacking tools, and attempts to bypass security to gain entry into protected areas, but they do this only to find weaknesses in the system. 1.5 Types of attacks. There are many types of attacks that can be categorized under two major categories: active attacks, passive attacks. 1.5.1 Active attacks. Active attacks involve the attacker taking the offensive in directing malicious packets towards its victims in order to gain illegitimate access of the target machine, such as by performing exhaustive user password combinations as in brute force attacks, or by exploiting remote and local vulnerabilities in services and applications that are termed as holes. Other types of attacks include masquerading attack, when attacker pretends to be a different entity. Attacker user fake identity of some legitimate user. Replay attack. In replay attack, attacker captures data and retransmits it to produce an unauthorized effect. It is a kind of man-in-middle attack. Modification attack. In this type of attack, integrity of the message is compromised. Message or file is modified by the attacker to achieve his malicious goals. Denial of service, DOS, attack. In DOS attack, an attacker attempts to prevent legitimate users from accessing information or services. By targeting your computer and its network connection, or the computers and network of the sites you are trying to use, an attacker may be able to prevent you from accessing email, websites, online accounts, banking, etc., or other services that rely on the affected computer. TCP and ICMP scanning is also a form of active attacks in which the attackers exploit the way protocols are designed to respond, for example ping of death, sync attacks, etc. In all types of active attacks, the attacker creates noise over the network and transmits packets, making it possible to detect and trace the attacker. Depending on the skill level, it has been observed that the skillful attackers usually attack their victims from proxy destinations that they have victimized earlier. 1.5.2 Passive attacks. Passive attacks involve the attacker being able to intercept, collect and monitor any transmission sent by their victims, thus eavesdropping on their victim and in the process being able to listen into their victims' or target's communications. Passive attacks are very specialized types of attacks which are aimed at obtaining information that is being transmitted over secure and insecure channels. Since the attacker does not create any noise or minimal noise on the network, so it is very difficult to detect and identify them. Passive attacks can be divided into two main types: the release of message content and traffic analysis. Release of message content. It involves protecting message content from getting in hands of unauthorized users during transmission. This can be as basic as a message delivered via a telephone conversation, instant messenger chat, email, or a file. Traffic analysis. It involves techniques used by attackers to retrieve the actual message from encrypted intercepted messages of their victims. Encryption provides a means to mask the contents of a message using mathematical formulas and thus make them unreadable. The original message can only be retrieved by a reverse process called decryption. This cryptographic system is often based on a key or a password as input from the user. With traffic analysis, the attacker can passively observe patterns, trends, frequencies, and lengths of messages to guess the key or retrieve the original message by various cryptanalysis systems. Chapter 2 Honeypot and HoneyNet 2.1 Honeypot is a system, or part of a system, deliberately made to invite an intruder or system cracker. Honeypots have additional functionality and intrusion detection systems built into them for the collection of valuable information on the intruders. The era of virtualization had its impact on security and honeypots. The community responded, marked by the fine efforts of Niels Provos, founder of A9AYTZ359N. and Torsten Holz for their masterpiece book Virtual Honeypots from Botnet Tracking to Intrusion Detection in 2007. 2.2 Types of honeypots. Honeypots can be categorized into two main types based on level of interaction. Deployment 2.2.1 Level of interaction. Level of interaction determines the amount of functionality a honeypot provides. 2.2.1.1 Low interaction honeypot. Low interaction honeypots are limited in the extent of their interaction with the attacker. They are generally emulator of the services and operating systems. 2.2.1.2 High interaction honeypot. High interaction honeypots are complex solutions. They involve with the deployment of real operating systems and applications. High interaction honeypots capture extensive amount of information by allowing attacker to interact with the real systems. 2.2.2 Deployment. Based on deployment, honeypot may be classified as production honeypots, research honeypots. 2.2.2.1 Production honeypots. Production honeypots are honeypots that are placed within the production networks for the purpose of detection. They extend the capabilities of the intrusion detection systems. These type of honeypots are developed and conditioned to integrate with the organization's infrastructure and scope. They are usually implemented as low-interaction honeypots, but implementation may vary depending on the available funding and expertise required by the organization. Production honeypots can be placed within the application and authentication server subnets and can identify any attacks directed towards those subnets. Thus, they can be used to identify both internal and external threats for an organization. These types of honeypots can also be used to detect malware propagation in the network caused by zero-day exploits. Since IDS's detection is based on database signatures, they fail to detect exploits that are not defined in their databases. This is where the honeypots outshine the intrusion detection systems. They aid the system and network administrators by providing network situational awareness. On basis of these results, administrators can take decisions necessary to add or enhance security resources of the organization, for example firewall, IDS and IPS etc. 2.2.2.1 Research honeypots. Research honeypots are deployed by network security researchers, the white hat hackers. Their primary goal is to learn the tools, tactics and techniques of the black hat hackers by which they exploit computers and network systems. These honeypots are deployed with the idea of allowing the attacker complete freedom and in the process learn his tactics from his movement within the system. Research honeypots help security researchers to isolate attacker tools they use to exploit systems. They are then carefully studied within a sandbox environment to identify zero-day exploits. Worms, Trojans and viruses propagating in the network can also be isolated and studied. The researchers then document their findings and share with system programmers, network and system administrators and various system and antivirus vendors. They provide the raw material for the rule engines of IDS, IPS and firewall system. Research honeypots act as early warning systems. They are designed to detect and log maximum information from attackers, yet being stealthy enough not to let attackers identify them. The identity of the honeypot is crucial, and we can conclude that the learning curve, from the attacker, is directly proportional to the stealthiest of the honeypot. These types of honeypots are usually deployed at universities and by the R&D departments of various organizations. These types of honeypots are usually deployed as high-interaction honeypots. 2.3 HoneyNet. The concept of the honeypot is sometimes extended to a network of honeypots, known as a honeynet. In HoneyNet, we group different types of honeypots with different operating systems, which increases the probability of trapping an attacker. At the same time, a setting in which the attacker explores the honeynet through network connections between the various host systems provides additional prospects for monitoring the attack and revealing information about the intruder. The honeynet operator can also use the honeynet for training purposes, gaining valuable experience with attack strategies and digital forensics without endangering production systems. The HoneyNet project is a non-profit research organization that provides tools for building and managing honeynets. The tools of the HoneyNet project are designed for the latest generation of high-interaction honeynets that require two separate networks. The honeypots reside on the first network, and the second network holds the tools for managing the honeynet. Between these tools, and facing the internet, is a device known as the honeywall. The honeywall, which is actually a kind of gateway device, captures controls, and analyzes all inbound and outbound traffic to the honeypots. 4. It is a high-interaction honeypot designed to capture a wide range of information on threats. High interaction means that a honeynet provides real systems, applications, and services for attackers to interact with, as opposed to low-interaction honeypots which provide emulated services and operating systems. It is through this extensive interaction we gain information on threats, both external and internal to an organization. What makes a honeynet different from most honeypots is that it is a network of real computers for attackers to interact with. These victim systems, honeypots within the honeynet, can be any type of system, service, or information you want to provide. 14. 2.4 Honeynet Data Management. Data management consists of 3 process: data control, data capture and data collection. 2.4.1 Data control. Data control is the containment of activity within the honeynet. It determines the means through which the attacker's activity can be restricted in a way to avoid damaging abusing other systems' resources through the honeynet. This demands a great deal of planning as we require to give the attacker freedom in order to learn from his moves and at the same time not let our resources, honeypot plus bandwidth, to be used to attack, damage and abuse other hosts on the same or different subnets. Careful measures are taken by the administrators of the honeynet to study and formulate a policy on attackers' freedom versus containment and implement this in a way to achieve maximum data control and yet not be discovered or identified by the attacker as a honeypot. Security is a process and is implemented in layers. Various mechanisms to achieve data control are available such as firewall, counting outbound connections, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems and bandwidth restriction, etc. Depending on our requirements and risk thresholds defined, we can implement data control mechanisms accordingly. 4. 2.4.2 Data capture. Data capture involves the capturing, monitoring and logging of outreach and attacker activities within the honeynet. Analysis of this captured data provides an insight on the tools, tactics, techniques and motives of the attackers. The concept is to achieve maximum logging capability at all nodes and hence log any kind of attacker's interaction without the attacker knowing it. This type of stealthy logging is achieved by setting up tools and mechanisms on the honeypots to log all system activity and have network logging capability at the honeywall. Every bit of information is crucial in studying the attacker, whether it's a TCP port scan, remote and local exploit attempt, brute force attack tool download by the hacker, various local commands run, any type of communication carried out over encrypted and unencrypted channels, mostly IRC, and any outbound connection attempt made by the attacker. 25. All of this should be logged successfully and sent over to a remote location to avoid any loss of data due to risk of system damage caused by attackers, such as data wipeout on disk, etc. In order to avoid detection of this kind of activity from the attacker, data masking techniques such as encryption should be used. 2.4.3 Data collection. Once data is captured, it is securely sent to a centralized data collection point. Data is used for analysis and archiving, which is collected from different honeynet sensors. Implementations may vary depending on the requirements of the organization. However, latest implementations incorporate data collection at the Honeywell Gateway. 19. 2.5 Honeynet architectures. There are 3 honeynet architectures, namely Generation I, Generation 2 and Generation 3. 2.5.1 Generation I architecture. General I Honeynet was developed in 1999 by the Honeynet project. Its purpose was to capture attackers' activity and give them the feeling of a real network. The architecture is simple with a firewall aided by IDS at front and honeypots placed behind it. This makes it detectable by attackers. 7. 2.5.2 Generation 2 and 3 architecture. Gen 2 Honeynets were first introduced in 2001 and Gen 3 Honeynets was released in the end of 2004. Gen 2 Honeynets were made in order to address the issues of General I Honeynets. Gen 2 and Gen 3 Honeynets have the same architecture. The only difference being improvements in deployment and management in Gen 3 Honeynets, along with the addition of SEPIC server built in the Honeywell. SEPIC is a stealthy capture tool installed on honeypots that capture and log all requests sent to the system read and write system call. This is very helpful in providing an insight on the attacker. 7. A radical change in architecture was brought about by the introduction of a single device that handles the data control and data capture mechanisms of the honeynet, called the IDS gateway, or marketing-wise, the honeywall. By making the architecture more stealthy, attackers are kept longer and thus more data is captured. There was also a major thrust in improving honeypot layer of data capture with the introduction of a new Unix and Windows-based data. 2.6 Virtual honeynet virtualization is a technology that allows running multiple virtual machines on a single physical machine. Each virtual machine can be an independent operating system installation. This is achieved by sharing the physical machine's resources such as CPU, memory, storage and peripherals through specialized software across multiple environments. Thus, multiple virtual operating systems can run concurrently on a single physical machine. A virtual machine is specialized software that can run its own operating systems and applications as if it were a physical computer. It has its own CPU, RAM, storage and peripherals managed by software that dynamically shares it with the physical hardware resources. Virtualization. A virtual honeynet is a solution that facilitates one to run a honeynet on a single computer. We use the term virtual because all the different operating systems placed in the honeynet have the appearance to be running on their own, independent computer. Network to a machine on the honeynet may indicate a compromised enterprise system. Chapter 3 Design and Implementation. Computer networks, connected to the Internet, are vulnerable to a variety of exploits that can compromise their intended operations. Systems can be subject to denial of service attacks, i.e. preventing other computers to gain access for the desired service, for example web server, or prevent them from connecting to other computers on the Internet. They can also be subject to attacks that cause them to cease operations either temporarily or permanently. A hacker may be able to compromise a system and gain root access as if he is the system administrator. The number of exploits targeted against various platforms, operating systems, and applications increasing regularly. Most of vulnerabilities and attack methods are detected after the exploitations and cause big losses. Following are the main components of physical deployment of honeynet. First is the design of the deployed architecture. Then we installed Sun VirtualBox as the virtualization software. In this we virtually installed 3 operating systems. 2 of them will work as honeypots and 1 Honeywell RU 1.4 as honeynet transparent gateway. Snort and Sepik are the part of Honeywell RU operating system. Snort as IDS and Snort inline as IPS. Sepik as the data capture tool on the honeypot. The entire OS and Honeywell functionality is installed on the system. It formats all the previous data from the hard disk. The only purpose now of the CD-ROM is to install this functionality to the local hard drive. Live CD could not be modified, so after installing it on the hard drive we can modify it according to our requirement. This approach helps us to maintain the Honeywell, allowing honeynet to use automated tools such as Syondro key packages current 31. In the following table there is a SUMMRY products with features installed in honeynet and hardware requirements. Current versions of the installed products are also mentioned in the table. Table 3.1 Project Summary Feature Product Specifications Host Operating System Windows Server 2003 R2HW Vendor HP Compact DC 7700 Processor Intel R Pentium Registered Trademark CPU 3 GHz RAM 2 GB Storage 120 GB NIC 1 GB Ethernet Controller Public IP Guest Operating System 1 Linux Honeywell RU 1.4 Single Processor Virtual Machine Honeywell RAM 512 MB Storage 10 GB NIC 100 Mbps Bridged Interface NIC 2 100 Mbps Host Only Interface NIC 3 100 Mbps Bridged Interface Public IP Guest Operating System 2 Linux Ubuntu 8.04 LTS Hardy Heron Single Processor Virtual Machine Honeypot RAM 256 MB Storage 10 GB NIC 100 Mbps Host Only VMNET Public IP Guest Operating System 3 Windows Server 2003 Single Processor Virtual Machine Honeypot RAM 256 MB Storage 10 GB NIC 100 Mbps Host Only VMNET Public IP Virtualization software Sun VirtualBox version 3 architecture Gen 3 implemented as a virtual HoneyNet ONIWALRU 1.4 IDS Snort 2.6x IPS Snort. Inline Snort Inline 2.6.1.5 Data Capture Tool, on honeypots. SEPIC 3.2.0 HoneyNet Project Online Tenure November 12, 2009 TO December 12, 2009 3.1 Deployed Architecture and Design 3.2 Windows Server 2003 as host OS Usability and performance of virtualization softwares are very good on Windows Server 2003. Windows Server 2003 is a server operating system produced by Microsoft. It is considered by Microsoft to be the cornerstone of its Windows Server system line of business server products. Windows Server 2003 is more scalable and delivers better performance than its predecessor, Windows 2000. 3.3 Ubuntu is honeypot determined to use free and open source software for this project. Linux was the natural choice to fill as the host operating system for our project server. Ubuntu 8.04 was used as a Linux-based honeypot for our implementation. The concept was to set up an up-to-date Ubuntu server, condition with commonly used services such as SSH, FTP, Apache, MySQL and PHP and study attacks directed towards them on the Internet. Ubuntu being the most widely used Linux desktop can prove to be a good platform to study zero-day exploits. It also becomes a candidate for malware collection and a source to learn hacker tools being used on the Internet. Ubuntu was successfully deployed as a virtual machine and set up in our HoneyNet with a host-only virtual Ethernet connection. The honeypot was made sweeter. That is an interesting target for the attacker by setting up all services with default settings. For example, SSH allowed password-based connectivity from any IP on default port 22. Users created were given privileges to install and run applications. Apache index HTML page was made remotely accessible with default errors and banners. MySQL default port 1434 was accessible and outbound connections were allowed but limited 3. Ubuntu is a computer operating system based on the Debian GNU Linux distribution. It is named after the Southern African ethical ideology Ubuntu, humanity towards others 5, and is distributed as free and open source software. Ubuntu provides an up-to-date, stable operating system for the average user, with a strong focus on usability and ease of installation. Ubuntu focuses on usability and security. The Ubiquity installer allows Ubuntu to be installed to the hard disk from within the live CD environment, without the need for restarting the computer prior to installation. Ubuntu also emphasizes accessibility and internationalization to reach as many people as possible. 33. Ubuntu comes installed with a wide range of software that includes OpenOffice, Firefox, Empathy, Pidgin in versions before 9.10, Transmission, GIMP, and several lightweight games, such as Sudoku and chess. Ubuntu allows networking ports to be closed using its firewall, with customized port selection available. End users can install GUFW and keep it enabled. GNOME, the current default desktop, offers support for more than 46 languages. Ubuntu can also run many programs designed for Microsoft Windows, such as Microsoft Office, through Wine or using a virtual machine, such as VMware Workstation or VirtualBox. The use of Ubuntu as a honeypot here would be effective to trick the hacker into believing for the presence of enterprise-level server. 3.4 Windows Server 2003 as honeypot. Windows Server 2003 is a server operating system produced by Microsoft. It is considered by Microsoft to be the cornerstone of its Windows Server system line of business server products. Windows Server 2003 is more scalable and delivers better performance than its predecessor, Windows 2000. We can run different type of services. FTP and SMTP services are running on this server. 3.5 Sun VirtualBox as virtualization software. Virtualization software has greatly helped reduce expenses and total cost of ownership, TCO, for organizations on their IT infrastructure. This is achieved by setting up an entire farm of enterprise servers as virtual machines on a single physical machine. Organizations are now developing their own virtualization software and solutions, many of which are free and open source. A few notable names that we considered for deployment include VMware, User Mode Linux, Sun VirtualBox, Zen, Kimu, Lugest and Linux Server. We selected Sun VirtualBox because Lite use very less system resources as compared to others. 3.5.1 Installation Procedure. Sun VirtualBox supports various versions of Windows as a host operating system. In addition, Windows Installer 1.1 or higher must be present on your system. This should be the case if you have all recent Windows updates installed. Performing the installation. The VirtualBox installation can be started either by double-clicking on its executable file, contains both 32 and 64-bit architectures, or by entering VirtualBox extract on the command line. This will extract both installers into a temporary directory in which you'll then find the usual MSI files. Then you can do -i VirtualBox version multi-arch x86-64 Armenian DRAMs, MSI to perform the installation. In either case, this will display the installation welcome dialog and allow you to choose where to install VirtualBox to and which components to install. In addition to the VirtualBox application, the following components are available. Depending on your Windows configuration, you may see warnings about unsigned drivers or similar. Please select Continue on these warnings as otherwise VirtualBox might not function correctly after installation. The installer will create a VirtualBox group in the Program Startup folder which allows you to launch the application and access its documentation. With standard settings, VirtualBox will be installed for all users on the local system. In case this is not wanted, you have to invoke the installer by first extracting it by using VirtualBox extract and then do as follows: VirtualBox msiprams alizers equals to wormsix/i VirtualBox version multi-arch x86-64 Armenian DRAMs, MSI alizers equals to on the extracted MSI files. This will install VirtualBox only for the current user. 15. 3.6 Honeywell RU Honeywell DRAM is a bootable CD-ROM. It consists of all the tools and functionality required to create, maintain and efficiently analyze the third-generation HoneyNet. The HoneyNet project has developed two versions of the Honeywell CD-ROM, Honeywell OR and Honeywell RU, released in May 2005 based on Gen 3 architecture. Current version 1.4 Honeywell serves as a transparent gateway for the HoneyNet. It is this gateway that has to perform data capture, data control, data collection and data analysis functions in order to ensure successful operations of a HoneyNet. Being a transparent gateway, this node is completely undetectable by the attacker when they are interacting with the honeypots. The purpose of the Honeywell CD-ROM is to automate the installation and maintenance of a HoneyNet and provide data analysis support for all activity within the HoneyNet. Deploying HoneyNets was a tough task as it involved advanced configuration and integration of security tools. There was no standard HoneyNet development till 1999. Many small groups had their own implementation of HoneyNets. The HoneyNet project has done remarkably well by developing a complete Honeywell distribution on a CD-ROM to deploy as an operating system on disk and thus made HoneyNets easy to deploy and manage. Honeywell was initially based on Fedora for quite some time as its base operating system, but due to frequent updates going on in Fedora, it is now based on CentOS. This gives freedom to install operating system-specific applications using standard package managers like RPM31. Honeywell has evolved over the years. Previous version, OR, had limited features and control. RU, the advanced version, has vastly improved hardware support, administration capabilities, and data analysis functionality. Thus the system is now moving towards giving the administrator more flexibility and control over the operating system. Honeywell RU comprises of many well-known security tools incorporated into it. 31. Table 3.1 Security tools of Honeywell. Security tool description: Snort Sniffer, IDSHFLOW2 data coalescing tool for HoneyNet data analysis. Snort Inline Sniffer, IPS-POFA passive OS fingerprinting tool. POF dump view packet headers. SEPA data capture tool. 3.6.1 Installation. First we need to start the VirtualBox and boot it with Honeywell CD-ROM. HoneyNet project splash screen with bootloader should appear. At this point the system will wait to let you interact with the installation process. If you press the Enter button, the system will begin the installation process after formatting the existing hard drive. After this, installation is a fully automated process, and no need to interact with the installation from this point on. The installation process of Honeywell is very much like a standard Linux kickstart install, involving following steps. Boot from Honeywell RU CD-ROM. For our implementation, we booted our virtual machine off the Honeywell RU 1.4 ISO. Choose Install, press Enter. From boot menu to wipe out all free space on disk and install the OS on this space. The installation is a fully automated process and does not require any further user interaction. Once the installation process is complete, it will eject the CD-ROM and boot into the newly installed System 12. After the system boots, your installation is complete and will be presented with a command line login prompt. Your hard drive now has a minimized and hardened Linux operating system with Honeywell functionality. Now you can log in and begin the configuration process. In Honeywell there is 2 default system accounts, root and root. Both share the same default password only, which you will want to change right away. You cannot log in as root, so you will have to log in as root and su. Honeywell root creates 2 default system user accounts, root, UIT501, and root, UIT0. Both these accounts are created with the default password honey. Root login is not allowed by default, so one has to log in as root and then su to root privileges 12. 2 methods can be used to con a Honeywell. First is dialog menu interface and other is Honeywell conf configuration file 3.7. Maintaining the Honeywell after Honeywell is installed, key issue is to maintain it properly. The new Honeywell gives you 3 options for configuring and maintaining your installation. 3.7.1 Dialog menu. It is a classic interface to administering the Honeywell CD-ROM. The new version is very similar to the older one, except it has new features added. We have already conditioned our Honeywell using dialog menu in previous steps. It can be loaded by typing menu in shell. 3.7.2 HWCTL. It is a powerful command line utility that allows you to con the system variables used by various programs, and the ability to start services. The advantage with this tool is you can simply modify the behavior of the system at the command line via local or SSH access. Following are some examples taken from man file 12. Show all variables currently set with name equals value form. Use A if you don't want the spaces. HWCTL. Just print on standard output the value of hostname HWCTL and hostname. Set all for connection rate limits and restart any services that depend on these variables. HWCTL or HWTCPRATE equals 20, white rate equals 10, whip rate equals 30, hoth rate equals 10. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me. I hope you enjoyed learning about HoneyNet as much as I did. Kindly remember that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay at Squid Essays for as little as $10. The link is in the description. See you next time.